Thanks for joining us. Appreciate you taking the time out of your day. As you know, with here at ECI, we are a modern service provider. So everything we do is underpinned by our security, and all AI is built into all of our solutions. So we'd like to take the time today to walk through some safety tips, some prompt engineering, and also building custom agents and some basics. We have with us today our Director of Microsoft, Julius Damato. Julius has been is our absolute expert on Microsoft and has hosted a variety of these webinars. So what I would encourage you is our question and answer platform is open. So please feel free, drop your questions in. Julius and I host these together pretty frequently. He's accustomed to me interrupting him when you all have questions. So please feel free, interrupt this. This is meant to be for your benefit so that you have takeaways from this event. After this event, the recording as well as the notes will be available. I know sometimes folks like to add their note taker. We have Copilot to do all of that for you. And in addition to that, we also have a Microsoft playbook that we'll be sending out tomorrow to all of you to kind of help you along your Copilot journey. So with that said, I will turn everything over to you, Julius.
Awesome. Thank you, Jen. Hello, everybody. Again, thank you for joining me this morning or evening where I am located in Chicago. If you would like to connect, my email address and the QR code will take you to my LinkedIn, so feel free to connect with me if you'd like. Happy to talk more about these topics or really any of the topic you'd like for that matter. Real quick, what we're going to cover today is we're going to level set first. We are going to kind of start with some real basic stuff just to make sure I'm covering those people. Pretty common thing that Jen and I run into is people go, hey, this was too much for me. It's like, okay, well, how about we level set a little bit? Then I am going to talk a bit about kind of safety tips on do's and don'ts. A core of what we're going to talk about today is Microsoft 365 Copilot centric and focused. However, you can really take a lot of what we're talking about and apply it to any AI technology you want to either implement or you're currently using. I always like to remind clients or tell clients that if you can use Microsoft Copilot effectively, you can be a rock star in just about any other tool that exists. And then if anybody tells you that they're an AI expert, that you should probably ignore everything that they're saying because they don't exist yet. We're going to cover prompt engineering, which is really just best practices on how to prompt. And then we will do some real basic building agents. We'll talk a bit about the different kinds of agents you can build, what is included, what's not. There's a ton of licensing nuances. So if you have questions on licensing, put them in the Q&A. I'll answer all the licensing questions at the end because I'm one of the few people that has joined that. But that being said, let's get rolling. So to level set real quick, let's briefly talk about what is a Copilot, because that is kind of the core of how Microsoft has their agents built and how it works as like a product. So if we can talk about how Microsoft 365 Copilot works and you can understand how that functions on the go forward and it as an ideology, it actually makes a lot more sense when we talk about how building agents and other technologies function. So what Microsoft Copilot is, importantly, versus other AI technologies, is not the underlying large language model itself. Copilot's what's considered an orchestrator. So it's taking your user prompt, connecting it with data that lives either internally or on the web if you have the appropriate licensing, and then passes it to a large language model to generate that response. That's important notation when you talk about really asking questions to Copilot, because it goes and generates and researches that information at the point in time you request it. It doesn't use underlying grounded data to answer those questions up front. So here on screen, I asked Copilot 3 separate days, 3 separate times, what is a Copilot? And those are the 3 answers, right? And you'll see there, it's a bit about kind of what I've already mentioned and a lot of what Microsoft talks about in their marketing materials. It talks about how it's built on top of a large language model, how it is meant to be collaborative, how it's using foundational models from Microsoft, such as the Prometheus model for Bing searching, as well as some of OpenAI's foundational models, and then it's primarily a chat interface, but it is specific on its information. It can generate text, emails, and summaries. I should mention there will be a number of links in this presentation. This is technically a PowerPoint live presentation, so I believe they should be clickable. Sometimes in the webinars, it doesn't click through. So if you want to try and click them now, do that or so. And again, you'll get a copy of the deck, so those will have the links too. But just as an FYI, because some of the slides will have some good stuff on it. Everything I'm talking about from it being an orchestrator makes sense when you talk about how Microsoft has Copilot. As you've seen, probably Microsoft has slapped Copilot on everything past Tuesday, so it lives in GitHub. They have Copilot in the Power Platform. There's Copilot for Dynamics. They have paid ones for sales, service, and finance. I realize this slide is a little bit old, so I will make sure that the newer slide is sent to everybody where it talks about Copilot with Bing. But there's really, when we talk about the core Microsoft experience, there's two types of Microsoft Copilot. There is Microsoft 365 Copilot Chat, and then there is Microsoft 365 Copilot. Important differentiator from that is Microsoft 365 Copilot Chat is the web-only version. So that's the one that comes free with all of your licensing from Microsoft. And then the Microsoft 365 Copilot is the paid version. That's the $30 a user a month in USD. I didn't come up with any of the marketing, so I'm going to apologize in advance. I try and make this as simple as possible, but that is like trying to pull hair off a rat. It's just not something you do. So I apologize there. But that's the core of what we're going to talk about today is those two offering and then how it relates to Copilot Studio and the ability to build agents there, as well as agents in SharePoint. Now, to scare everybody really quickly with what Microsoft 365 is, because this is also kind of a core of how Copilot Studio works, is everything starts with a user prompt. So that is the core of how Copilot works. It's not running in the background, churning up, getting information. That's where declarative agents come into play, which we'll talk about in a few moments. But everything you do with Copilot does start with a user prompt. So again, nothing is going on there. As I mentioned, a core of what it works is it goes through this grounding layer. So that's where it pulls information either from Bing or data that lives in your Microsoft 365 graph. That's everything SharePoint, Teams, OneDrive, etc. And then importantly, as I mentioned, it takes the prompt and passes it over to the large language model itself. To answer the questions about the large language models, because I get them more than really anything else, nothing you do with Microsoft 365 Copilot, Microsoft Copilot Chat, or Copilot Studio is ever used to train or coach the models. It's never used on any of the foundational information. It's never passed to any third parties. Your data is your data. There's a big reason to use the platform versus ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude, where you need to bolt on a compliance module, which comes at added cost. That module for compliance is directly tied to your Microsoft licensing, which in most cases you already have in order to facilitate your normal Microsoft 365 experience. Importantly, today, the models that live in Microsoft 365 Copilot are built on OpenAI. So they are OpenAI models. However, OpenAI has no access to the underlying models, information, prompts that get passed through, etc. Again, your data is your data. An important thing to note on that is because of the way Copilot is built as a product, it gives Microsoft the ability to flip and rotate models out of the core service offering whenever they want. So you may have seen recently that Microsoft is adding Claude over to a number of the Microsoft 365 services. There'll be additional models that get announced as a part of Microsoft Ignite, which takes place later this month in San Francisco. We'll be attending that. So if you're interested in any info that comes out of that, there will be some links and stuff that will be shared amongst our client base in the next coming weeks to talk about that. But it does allow Microsoft to pivot what models they use, offer additional tools and modeling from there. And I talk about this largely because when I was building agents with clients, arguably a year and a half ago, since I've been using Copilot for 3 years now, when it was in beta, those agents, there's no need for them to exist anymore. If you can prompt engineer, you no need to build agents today 7 out of 10 times, especially if you're talking about doing summarization or generation. You can just use the main Copilot experience, and most likely you'll get a better experience from that anyway. So importantly, think of it from that way, where prompt engineering really becomes more important in today's world, because you can apply that then to any AI technology, whether it's one that you use daily or one that you want to fold in the future as the technologies kind of evolve. That being said, let's just run through some really quick do's and don'ts. So I think that these are pretty self-explanatory, but you'd be surprised how often that gets unnoticed or missed. So let's talk about some do's. So you want to be transparent. So you want to communicate that you are using AI when you work with your colleagues and or in your specific workflows. Whether you're using it for decision-making processes, you do want to make sure you're disclosing that you're doing it. You want to make sure that you're fostering an ethical accountability. So if someone was using AI and it doesn't sound right, you're not holding that employee directly responsible, which, I mean, you probably should, because they should have used the tool properly. But making sure that it's being used ethically and make sure you have a culture around accountability on that is hyper important. And then lastly, as AI continues to evolve, you do want to make sure that you're continuously disclosing capabilities and its limitations. I talk a ton about what Copilot is. I talk a ton about what it's not when I talk with clients, and many of my Copilot direct engagements with those with clients. So being able to understand where you can start and stop, even though the technology is near limitless, every product has a purpose. Each one is designed to fit a specific niche. So being aware of what that is and staying on top of it is hyper important with end users as well as with what you're using it for. You do want to validate outputs. You would be surprised how much AI slop gets thrown around. I'm sure you've all seen it, where people just ask question, generate document, send it off on its way. You do want to have the human in the middle, the human review part. It is hyper important. Someone needs to have eyes on it. It is a core of how Copilot is built specifically. A big thing I get with clients is, oh, we like the way ChatGPT generates information. I like how Perplexity works. I like how Claude works. That's great. But 9 times out of 10, the reason for that is they don't want to have to review it. They don't want to have eyes on. Whereas Copilot kind of brings you in, right? When you look at how it responds, it's like, oh, hey, do you want this? Do you want that? Oh, I think this is a good idea. Do you want me to do this for you instead, right? It kind of is bringing you along for the journey. It's your air quote Copilot, your assistant, versus doing the job for you, which is kind of a core of how it functions. You do want to do regular audits. So importantly, with Copilot, you get access to what's called DSPM for AI. That's a data security and posture management platform. That gives you the ability to look at prompts, both ones that are coming from the web version as well as your paid users. And importantly, as you look at building agents, any agents you build in the Microsoft 365 extensibility layer, those interactions get logged in the platform. So you're able to see those interactions. You're able to look at agent-to-agent interaction, which is something we'll talk about in a bit. And you're really able to drill into, are people using it properly? Should I configure alerts around specific classifications or sensitive information types that are being used? So you do want to look at that regularly. I have a lot of clients that I talk to that just turn on licensing for XYZ product and just have a good day, and they're not doing regular review. That leads to users not adopting it really, as well as creating potential risk around people having access to information you didn't know they had access to. So oversharing is hyper important. Being on top of that, hyper important there as well. Now, from a data privacy perspective, you always want to avoid putting in sensitive information. That should be self-explanatory. If you don't want it to end up on the newspaper, you probably shouldn't pass it through any AI tool unless you've done proper due diligence. The lack of due diligence is usually the biggest crux of every business I've talked to. And then again, I've been on phone calls with customers that have wanted to get ChatGPT Enterprise, and their compliance officer asks 2 questions, and one of those questions are, when can you send me a quote? So you do want to make sure you're doing due diligence. I don't care what tool it is, even Microsoft. I'll send you the URL that talks through how they're GDPR compliant, how they meet ISO 47002. All that documentation is available, so you do want to do due diligence. You do want to understand how you can retain data in that platform. Microsoft 365 Copilot, as long as you're licensed appropriately, we can retain all the interactions for as long as you want, or purge them if you don't want to see them ever again. So making sure that you understand where they start and stop is, and you have some form of journaling if you want to have that retention in place, is really hypercritical on there. You do want to make sure you're employing data security measures, whether that be data labeling, information protection, data lifecycle management, insider risk management. You do want to make sure you're leveraging the tools that come with your license to secure that. So you don't want it to be hog wild where you're just turning a blind eye on how data is being used. And then lastly, at least with Copilot, you know that the data that they're passing through and the way that they are teaching, securing, and protecting hallucinations is it's meant to be ethical. It's not meant to just kind of take something and spit it out and have a good day. It is meant to be grounded foundationally in certain things. So it won't answer questions on adult content, weapons, erotica, all that fun stuff that people love about ChatGPT. That's not for the business, so you probably shouldn't be adorning it. So you want to make sure that that content is being secured there. So on some don'ts, avoid blind trust. It's pretty self-explanatory. AI can make errors. You'll see most platforms now give you a little bubble that says this is AI. Make sure you check it. That is covering them, not covering you. So you want to make sure you're enforcing that with the users. You do want to encourage this idea of skepticism. Every output I get with Copilot, I don't take it at face value. I ask questions about it either in a completely different Copilot chat or I look at the information that it used as its grounding to make sure that that's kind of appropriate for what is fit for purpose. So you want to teach people to encourage skepticism, make sure that they're doing review, check your citations, make sure sources are relevant, because you don't want to be kind of random in there. Human judgment is essential, right? We have this idea of AI slop and brain rot. We don't want to lose the human side of what we're doing. That's what makes you money. It's what makes us money. Otherwise, everyone would just ask Copilot how to do this super crazy technical thing and have it done, right? So human judgment is important. It's the kind of ghost in the shell mentality on how you handle human and computer machine learning judgment making on critical topics and critical tasks. That's a core of how you should look at your workflows as well. So you do want to have that balancing act of where I need to have human input and where I don't, but you always want to start with human evaluation. Biggest reason why AI fails with clients that I see is they don't have that regular interaction. They don't have that regular upkeep on their agents or their AI adoption. So everything starts to fall to the wayside on that balancing act. And everyone just kind of bleeds onto, I don't trust it, or I trust it too heavily, and it turns into kind of a slop land. You want to make sure that you're managing your data appropriately. So you want to avoid sharing sensitive information. Again, just to reiterate on that, you do want to make sure you're implementing some data governance policies. You can do that with Copilot. It's built on top of the Purview platform. You can make any one of the pre-canned regulatory body stuff, just click a button and deploy it, or we can customize it to make it fit your business. That doesn't always go for all the AI tooling. So again, make sure you do due diligence. Make sure that you can apply some form of data governance around your data. Data governance, according to Foster, according to Gartner, according to third-party analysis, by 2030, you need to have some form of data governance, whether that be via information protection, data labeling, data identification. You need to have a policy or some procedure in place to do that, or you're going to fall to the wayside. You're going to have major leakages in your information. It's something that is on the roadmap that you should put on there as a part of your technology spend or your uptick by 2030. Have some form of that in place. Most of you likely already have it. You just need to go and turn it on. We can help you do that with your Microsoft licensing if you wish. You can even connect that to third-party data if you want as well. And then lastly, last two things there, make sure you're doing your due diligence and evaluating how the AI vendors are handling your data. It's a big reason why we recommend you turn off third-party agents even in Copilot, because if you can't get vendor attestation, you can't get Microsoft to attest on how your data is being handled, you probably shouldn't use that platform. And then you do want to make sure the platforms that you use, because your CEO or your managing director, your VP absolutely has to have this tool, make sure it's secure, do, again, proper due diligence. And lastly, where things kind of fall on the ethical side is really where things are misleading users, where you start ignoring bias of modeling, where you're trying to over-correct and over-automate, to remove that human judgment part. That is the part that kind of air quote prints you money. That's why people subscribe to my services as well as ECIs, and why you are able to be managing partners. And then there is manipulation with AI. It's common to see it happen, especially if you're training your own models using third-party platforms that aren't secure. You do want to make sure that you have some form of monitoring in place for that manipulation, whether that be hijacking, whether it be prompt injection, whether it be white text in emails that you don't see that ChatGPT is not picking up on. You want to make sure that you're keeping up on top of that. And importantly, with everything I've talked about a couple of Microsoft services, and one of them, importantly, is Microsoft Purview. So Microsoft Purview, to be a Microsoft shrill for the next few slides, is Microsoft's data governance service. It helps you manage, discover, and organize data both on-prem, multi-cloud, and SaaS-based. So it can really touch basically everywhere your data is. And importantly, as we talk about AI, that mapping becomes important. That gets important when we start talking about agentic workflows, declarative agents. You all know where to go to get the answer. AI does not. So being able to map that is critical, is important. So that's what Purview really specializes on, is the discovery, the cataloging, access and sharing, because if you're oversharing, over-permissioned, it'll be your biggest downfall, because Johnny likely has access to the compensation files that you didn't know he had access to, and neither did he. And importantly, with Purview, it is built on compliance and risk management. So we can set up alerting, you can configure alarms for certain types of prompts, certain types of interactions, so that you can either coach your users to not do that, or build AI policies to ensure people aren't performing those types of actions. And if you're interested to know how you can look at your data and security, here's a nice little slide on which technology fits into which bucket. So when we talk about access, when you're licensed for Microsoft 365 Copilot, you get SharePoint Advanced Management Plan 2 included. So that gives you the ability to audit your SharePoint access, look at oversharing, look at permissions. Importantly, the thing that gets a lot of clients is broken inheritance in SharePoint, because that does not work the same as you think if you're coming from traditional network shares. So it's regular auditing you want to do on that. I've seen clients that don't have anything in SharePoint, supposedly. They add Copilot licensing and the users start asking questions, and it starts spewing out stuff that they didn't know was in the platform. So you want to make sure you're doing regular permission and access content reviews on those. From an information protection perspective, that's where the purview sensitivity labeling, data loss prevention, and cloud app security come into place. If you want to sanction and unsanctioned specific AI tooling to make sure that it can't be used across your data estate, you have that capability with the platform, so go ahead and turn that on. Sensitivity labeling and DLP doesn't need to be complicated. Start with your most critical data, start with the data that you want to secure the most, then add other workflows on top of that. If you can get it to win on your critical stuff, you can get it to work on Jenny in accounting, who doesn't want this one type of data to be forwarded to this other org. It's very easy to do. It doesn't take a lot of work, just a bit of conversation about actually walking through that workflow. When we talk about governance and lifecycle, shit in, shit out. If you have old stale data, you will get old stale responses. So lifecycle is important. Data lifecycle is a big crux as well. So if you have old stale data, it's past your 7-year retention, bin it. If you want to set up SharePoint sites that Copilot can access, you just want to move that data or archive it, there's solutions for that, both free and paid. So you can use Microsoft 365 archiving to auto archive site, auto archive data. If you don't need it anymore, get it off. Don't keep it. You can keep it in cold storage, but don't keep it active in your tenant. It just leads to user frustration and inaccurate responses. And then lastly, as I mentioned, the DSPM used to be the DPSM. It's Microsoft changes things 15 times, as we're all aware. But the data security posture management platform is there to help you identify interactions. Look at other AI tooling. It's a very common thing we do where we connect Claude Enterprise, Perplexity Enterprise, ChatGPT Enterprise into Purview so that you can capture those interactions, review them, look at behavioral patterns, do advanced e-discovery searching. So importantly, you can tie that to Defender for Cloud App, Defender for Endpoint. See when someone clicked on a link, that was a malicious URL, someone downloaded malware, hit Copilot or your other AI tools with 1,000 prompts in 35 seconds and stole data. You want to put protections in place on that stuff because it has happened. That is a real thing that occurs. Hackers now are either spamming you with AI-generated, beautiful-looking emails, or they're hitting you with white text and emails and documents, or they're maliciously attacking unbeknownst users. Oversharing is in place. People are not properly securing ChatGPT workspaces, not realizing that that feature is open to everybody, and they add themselves in there, and unknowingly that data gets leaked. Again, want to make sure you're doing holistic reviews on that stuff as well. Now, we talked about data security. That was all everyone's fun part there, so tap yourselves on the back. I'm glad we got through that part. It was arguably the longest. Now we're going to go a bit quick, and then we'll talk about agents. So let's talk about best practices. Now, to tackle all the people that are new to AI, really what is a prompt? Prompt's a question or instruction you put into a chat box. And the differentiator for that is you're using natural language. So you use full sentences typically in order to generate a response versus you going into Outlook and saying, hey, let me find that email from Julius, and you just search through your endless scroll of emails for me because I've sent you 100 million emails in the last 7 years. You're using regular search there. So you're versus typical keyword search, where you're just using single words, use natural language. So if I'm looking for a pizzeria, with AI, I go, hey, show me pizzeria in a 5-block radius of our New York office. I want it ranked by anything 5 stars and give me the price per slice, right? So you're being more specific versus having to manually perform those actions, and that's where kind of AI excels. Chatting is important, and how you chat, really straightforward, is first you enter in your chat bubble. You typically put in as much information or as little information in there as you want. Second, you do want to check your sources. You want to check sources, check citations. Copilot and most tooling today is transparent on what is used to generate information. So you do want to check that and make sure it's accurate. Because again, if it used a file from 2014, that's probably not relevant in 2025 unless you asked about it. And then lastly, Where Copilot excels, and again, where it's meant to be transformative, is that continued conversation. So it acts more like a colleague where it's like, well, hey, maybe you want this TPS report in a pivot table, or hey, I think this is better formatted here, or would you like me to make a executive one-pager for your upcoming webinar on mastering AI safety tips? Ask me how I know that's a question. So again, it's meant to be conversational, continue the conversation going. When we talk about prompting, there is no wrong or right way to prompt. There is a less effective and a more effective way. So less effective is when you're vague, you use few words, you don't have any context or preferred output. So summarize news about insert company will be pretty bland. It'll be pretty generic. It'll just be a general kind of recap. It won't be formatted in a way you may like it. Versus if you're being more specific and detailed, useful sentences, instructions, or you state a tone, purpose, preferred format, etc., you're going to get much closer to, as I refer to it, as well as Microsoft, your final draft. The idea with AI is not to get you the final print, but to get you closer to that final draft. Add the human sizzle on the end of it for 15, 20 minutes versus you spending 4 hours working on the task. So example there is I work in marketing, focus on competitor research. I want a concise summary about news on the company, focus on announcements on new product lines. You want answers in 2 or 3 paragraphs with a business tone. It'll look beautiful. It'll be exactly what you're looking for to move forward. So again, you want to be as detailed and instructed as possible. I see that hit everybody all the time, especially if you're coming from ChatGPT. It makes a ton of assumptions, which a lot of people like. But in reality, that's not how AI is really meant to function. When you think about it from a chat perspective, it is meant for you to tell it what to do. Again, treat AI like an assistant. Treat it like a summer intern. Summer interns don't know what letterhead to use, what colors you use for marketing, what type of font you want to use. So again, make sure you're being explicit in that type of stuff. When we talk about the art and science of prompting, importantly, Copilot can help you in a lot of areas. It's great for creation, learning, editing, transforming, summarizing, getting caught up. So again, all the things I've already kind of covered, but those are some good examples on screen of some prompts that you can pass through it. When we talk about the right ingredients for a prompt, and this is something you can take with you on any AI platform, is you should think about your prompts in kind of 4 buckets. You have your goal, your context, your source, and your expectation. Importantly, if you know the source of information, include it. It doesn't hurt. It only helps you get to the final result faster. If you have expectations on output, include it. There's no reason not to. That's really a big key of what makes AI successful, is making sure that you're prompting appropriately. You'll always have a goal and a context, but importantly, if you know where to go, tell it where to go. Same thing, summer intern mentality. Same thing with expectation setting. And then again, Copilot's meant to keep the conversation going. So it's great at that idea building. It's great at being insightful on meetings. It's actually fantastic at translating languages. Today, Microsoft 365 Copilot supports 48 languages. It was actually just expanded, I believe, to 50 some odd. So you can do full document translation, just specific bodies of text, etc. It works fantastic. I convert stuff into German quite more than I wish I did have to. And then importantly, as everyone here may or may not realize, there's no better tool to ask, how do I do something with this tool, than Copilot. If you have a question on how to use Copilot, I have stickers, I have shirts that say, ask Copilot, don't ask me. So that's something that you should adopt. If you have a question on, hey, Copilot, can you do this? Ask it. It will tell you yes or no if it can or can't, or give you the steps how to do it. And soon it'll just give you a link you can click on and it'll do it for you, believe it or not. But that being said, don't be afraid to ask it if it can do something. Last couple slides here before we talk about agents. I know everyone's probably biting at the inch for that, but you do want to think about how you structure your prompts. We were all born and raised and all over this great big blue beautiful earth of ours. I am originally from New York. I live now in Chicago, as I mentioned before. I still call it water. So importantly, that is reflected in how I write. It's reflected in how I talk. It's reflected in how I communicate. AI is actually pretty junk at that. It doesn't understand sarcasm, as you may have discovered. It doesn't do a great job with understanding kind of nuances in specific languages. That's every tool. So if you're prompting, you're not getting what you want, really think about how you wrote it. Think about restructuring it. So as an example there, the first prompt is goal, context, and then example, whereas the second prompt is context, example, goal. They get you inherently the same response, but it's structured a bit different. It is a bit more geared to what you may or may not like. So a lot of ways I prefer the first response, so prompt 1, whereas a lot of clients I work with prefer the second one, and a lot of it just comes down to a user thing there. When it comes to Copilot explicitly, something I take away from here for using the web version or the paid version, is Copilot always emphasizes the last sentence of your prompt. So if you structure your prompts with that in mind, you will get fantastic results every time. It's really the key to making Copilot successful is kind of structuring your prompts so that the most important part is the last part. Everything I've been telling you right now has been telling you what to do with Copilot. Importantly, don't forget to tell it what not to do. If you are going to go to Japan at any point in your life, I can tell you without a doubt there's about 7 million other things you should do besides go to Disney. But if you're a Disney fanatic, who am I to judge you? Have at it. So don't be afraid to tell Copilot what to do. Don't be afraid to tell it what not to do. And importantly, it's a good segue into iterating and regenerating. So when you prompt, don't be afraid to continue to expand on your initial prompt in that conversation stream. Again, the same way you would talk with a colleague, right? You would say, hey, write me something about the advancements in renewable technologies. They would give you something and you go, you know what? I want this to be a technical article. Discuss recent advancements, focus on solar and wind. And then when they give you that back, you know what? Make this a bit more composed. I want to make sure we're exploring some recent advancements, discuss some scientific principles, and I want to refer only to recent research. Again, you can continue to iterate, you can continue to generate, you don't have to get your prompt right the first time. It's what makes Copilot so good at what it does, is it doesn't waste time generating text that you didn't think was relevant. It gives you short responses if you're short and expansive responses if you're expansive. Back onto the slide of stuff that you can click on. Here are the top 10 things you should try first with Microsoft 365 Copilot. Again, being Microsoft shrill. If you want to see these prompts or any more of them, you can go to aka.ms/prompts, or you can click on the prompts gallery inside the Microsoft 365 Copilot interface. So directly under the little chat window, you'll see a button that you can click on that says prompt gallery or show see more, and then you'll see prompt gallery. That button's going to get moved again. Don't worry about it. It'll be easier. That's a great way to look at those as well, so you don't have to go to the web page. And then what Copilot's fantastic at is getting you answers you need to move forward. It's great at hiring tips. It's great at starting you to do research. It's fantastic at synonyms. I'm terrible with my words. And it is great at some funny things. So one on here that a client pointed out a couple of months ago was, apparently we're still buying office printers. So it's great at doing product comparisons. It's great at getting you concise summaries. Don't be afraid to do that. Where I find Copilot the most useful in my life, or AI in general, is really that brainstorming and the drafting content perspective. I suffer very much from white page syndrome. I'm a visual audio learner at the core of who I am as a person. So I use it to co-create. I use it for my reviews. I have it format stuff for me in pivot tables. I have it improve my writing because apparently I'm passive aggressive. Who would have thought? So again, don't be afraid to do that and explore more. Whew. All right, one second. Some water here. So let's talk about the thing everybody came here for.
While you take a pause, let's just tease out that the questions at this point. Does anyone have any questions? A lot of information, right? We walked through prompt engineering, we walked through purview, we walked through data classification. Now is a great time. If you had any questions that you wanted to put it within the Q&A module, let Julius have 2 sips of water instead of 1. And just see if anyone had any concerns at this point.
Yeah, thank you, Jen. I tend to get excited and go fast, so thank you for the slowdown.
Nope, not at all. All right, I think we have a smart group with us. They're ready to build agents. We're back to you.
Perfect. So let's get started and talk very quickly on what agents are, and then we'll kind of go into kind of building them in a sense. So agents, when you build them, importantly, what I'm going to talk about is building them inside of Microsoft 365 Copilot. Sorry, all the acronyms. Talk about Microsoft Copilot Studio. So that's where I build a majority of the agents I do. If not in Microsoft Copilot Studio Lite, I do it inside of Copilot Studio, the full core version. Licensing disparity we can talk about later. But importantly, when you build in there, you can take all the same data security that I just ran through on what you should do with Copilot, the main Copilot interface, and apply it to your agents, right? So everything you do with the Copilot Studio is still built on that data security layer. So it can leverage data labeling, leverage information protection. It'll be grounded in all your permissioning. It follows your security controls. It'll be comprehensive in visibility. Again, you can see the agent-to-agent interactions if you want that. You can see users interacting with specific agents, interacting in notebooks, etc. You can see that full chain of custody. From an access and cost control perspective, you have full visibility in the costs behind it. Whether you want to do pay-as-you-go, buy them as Copilot credit packs, or just use the core of your Microsoft 365 Copilot licensing. You have full control over that, as well as who can't create agents, where they can be created, where they can't be. Some of that has some additional costs depending on what type of agents we're talking about. That gets into licensing and building agents nuances, my favorite topic. And you are able to track changes. So it does have version control. As you're publishing, pushing changes, you can see that, see it importantly in the admin logs, and go from there. And then they do have really good measurements and reporting. So whether they're agents that come out of the core experience or out of the full experience, you're able to track that. You're able to get feedback on improvements, make them. If you want to publish agents externally, there's a separate thing you have to do that. But you do have capability of seeing those interactions as well. But it does give you reporting on business impact and etc. So all of the interactions do stay in Microsoft 365. It does stay in the Azure service boundary, provided you haven't turned on the Anthropic Claude modeling. Talk about that as I show off agents in a bit. And then it does follow, again, everything I've talked about from a governance, security, compliance, and privacy perspective. So if you have information barriers defined, it'll honor those as well. So there's a wide spectrum of agents. Agents, fortunate or not, just like Microsoft 365 Copilot, is a very broad word. It applies to a lot of different things. So their agents are great at, there are agents that do retrieval, agents that do task actions, and there are autonomous agents. So agents vary based on complexity, based on capability, and really the business need. So today you do have the ability to do retrieval. You're able to do tasks with Copilot actions and tools, and then you do have the ability to do autonomous agents in preview that'll be generally available in the next coming weeks. So you are able to operate independently, let them be dynamic, be in that frontier mentality where you're using AI to help automate and drive business impact. But today, most of the agents you're going to build are in that phase 1, phase 2, retrieval, and then task automation. So one way to build agents, and a big one that I do, is agents in SharePoint. So every SharePoint site that you have in your business today has Copilot, has SharePoint agents, built on top of it. I talk about these agents a lot because these agents are great for quick wins. If you have due diligence reports, you have marketing material, you have data sitting around in SharePoint that you want to have an agent wrapped around to answer specific targeted questions, or having some instruction on top of there for formatting, SharePoint agents are for you. Importantly, you don't have to be pro developer to use agents. Importantly, with both agents in SharePoint and Copilot Studio. These are no-code, low-code platforms which really help end users adopt the technology and help drive it forward. So with SharePoint agents, it honors permissions in the SharePoint library. It automatically inherits any of the existing security stack or inherited permissions on the library itself. You govern them just like regular SharePoint files, so you can make it simpler for anybody here who's afraid of the Power Platform and maintaining that from an admin perspective. It still honors all the same access protocols that we've talked about previously under Purview. You are able to operate those agents only in the Microsoft 365 boundaries. You don't have to worry about them going and touching stuff that you wouldn't want it to touch. And they do always respond specifically to the requester's permissions. So if Jenny has access to certain folders and files in that SharePoint site and Johnny doesn't, Johnny won't get the answers to those questions. You don't have to worry about the data due diligence and governance on that. You just have to do regular permission review before we let it go hog wild. When we talk about Copilot Studio, which is where a lot of people want to get to, you have Copilot Studio Lite, which was renamed from Copilot Agent Builder, which I argue was a better name, but I don't have $5 billion to spend on marketing like Microsoft, so someone decided that. Then you have Copilot Studio, which arguably is kind of for the makers. So there you can build declarative or custom engine agents if you would like, and then you bleed into Azure AI Foundry. So that's being able to use real custom engine agents there, do your own RAG, do your own rig, do your own NLUs, all that fun stuff that if you're a pro developer, that's probably the way you want to go. Importantly, again, you want to look at this from how you're going to present AI to your end users. If you can leverage Copilot Studio, you can put it in the Microsoft 365 extensibility layer. So that's your ability to just bring it in with users. You can get your agents that you want to build in the hands of users without having to build a custom UI, without having to spin up a web page, without having to do all the normal stuff you'd have to do with standard app development. You can just leverage what Microsoft has already built for Copilot to deliver that to you. Importantly then, you can get those agents in all your Office apps. So if you have a marketing agent that answers questions about branding, shout out to you, Jen. You have that agent there that will generate that stuff. You can just say in a Word doc, hey, what color am I supposed to use for font? This is a Word document. It'll say, hey, here's the color for that, right? So on the font style. You can have those agents be portable. They will be available on mobile. I have it today in the Frontier program, but agents will be available fully in mobile in the next coming days. So you do have the capability of doing that as well. So again, using the extensibility layer, you can make your agents pipeable, portable, without having to worry too much about governance on that. Again, Studio is for low code, no code. And then when you do stuff in Azure AI Foundry, that is explicitly meant for pro developers. So in the middle there is you can now build Copilot Studio agents using Visual Studio Code if you want to connect to your agent base from that perspective. But that is a way to look at your agents. So to bring this up before I switch over to my cloud PC, there are 4 main agents platforms you want to look at. You have what you do with agents in SharePoint. Think of those again as quick wins, easy for people who have no idea about how to build anything in their life. Use those. Copilot Studio Lite is for agents, more for you. They're for really quick declarative agents. They're good at using existing connectors you may have in place. They largely only do retrieval. They can't really do document generation directly, so it's good for specific formatting, being able to copy paste that. I have agents that build agents, funnily enough, in that realm, and only really live in Microsoft 365. Then you have Copilot Studio, the full Copilot Studio, where you have the ability to have them leverage tools, actions, triggers, so you're able to really make them more declarative, make them use custom engines, let them talk to other agents, which will be a feature of the core Microsoft 365 chat in the coming weeks as well, which is a big reason you should build agents, in my opinion, in Copilot Studio, because soon all agents there will be agentic, but that's a different conversation for another day, or tomorrow if you're going to join us for that webinar. And then lastly is Azure AI Foundry if you're a pro developer. So those are your 4 options with Microsoft 365 licensing. If you want to know more about those, feel free to reach out or put them in the Q&A while I pivot over to my cloud PC. So let's build a couple agents really quickly. It'll be largely the same agent, just kind of 2 different ways. So let me pivot to my cloud PC. So hold on 1 second, please. And then if I can just get a thumbs up that somebody can see that, that would be great. Perfect. Thank you, Jen. So let's get started with agents in SharePoint, because again, think of those as your quick win agents. There's no reason to not start there, especially if you're kind of just doing some beta, thinking about how you may want to structure something or build it. So I'm in my demo tenant, by the way. So welcome aboard to Brown Bear Asset Management. Is today going to be the day live demos don't work? All right, so I'm going to go to this DDQ site really quickly because I have some stuff in here that is relevant probably to what we have. So first of all, again, as I mentioned, every SharePoint site that you have in your client, in your tenant, excuse me, is Copilot or agent enabled by default. You'll see that here on the top right, you have this little agent icon. I didn't come up with it, so sorry, it's pretty ambiguous now, but at least it's not the Copilot icon. And when you get here, you're able to ask questions to it. So every site is enabled with it. It'll answer questions on content that is in the document libraries, in the pages itself. So if I want to get a summary of recent files, right, and click that button, I can submit it and get answers. So nothing fancy you have to do. You just have to steer a person to a SharePoint site. So if you're building an intranet internally, these are really great for that. You can go ahead and get responses on content that lives there. Today, of course, it's going to be slow. There are the most recent files. It's going to talk about probably agents that I've built in here for similar demos for clients. So you can see there that. So I cannot stop this in this interface. So I'm just going to close that for now. But when you want to build an agent, importantly, you can do it directly in the document library. So that experience a lot of people are already familiar with, you're able to do that today. So what you can do is under AI actions, because I have the new interface and it is not going to work today, is it? Cool. So I'm stuck in between land because they're moving everything AI related under AI actions. But what I'm going to do is let me just see if I can actually select a few and then let it pop up as question summaries. Yeah, so I don't have the build an agent menu. Sorry, I'm just trying to find it because Microsoft has been moving the. Okay, yeah, so they moved it up here now. So in the agent experience here, to get to it just kind of quickly. When you click on agents there, if you click the down arrow here, you have the option to create an agent. This will bring you to the main interface. By default, what it's going to do is pick all the documents that are in the library. You may want that. You may want to tweak that when the build an agent button comes back. I can show you how to do that. But importantly, you can just select the files or folders you want in the SharePoint site to quickly create an agent. What I'm going to do here is I'm just going to edit it because I don't like the name. What I'll call this is I'll call this the APAC Q agent. I can pick an icon and give a purpose. It's important when you build agents to always give a purpose, especially when we talk about how agents will become agentic. Purpose is, think of it as your description. It's an easy way for people to know what the agent is used for, as well as what other agents will know what it will be for. So what we're going to call this is okay, so we'll click on sources now. Another sources, this is where we're able to fine tune what data is going to be used. So I'm going to remove the document library. I'm going to add kind of specific files really quickly. So let's do Apex, BDC, Crestwave. You can see my agents as files there. UQR, Solaris. Yeah, let's pick those 9. So we got those 9 files. You can add additional URLs if you want. This way you can get more libraries in there as well if you want. So you do have that capability with the SharePoint agents. And importantly, look at your behavior. So you are able to tweak that welcome message where it's like ask this here. You're able to change your starter prompt. So I'm going to change one of them to be which company has the highest. So you'll see that update there. And importantly, with agents, especially when we talk about these interfaces, is you're going to use instruction to provide the tone, provide what type of content it should be using, how it should be replying to you. Hint, hint, wink, wink. I always start my agent building by vibe agent building. So I'll ask Copilot, hey, this is my idea for an agent. Give me instructions for this agent. And I normally call out I'm using them in SharePoint, or I'm using it in the agent builder, which is not Copilot Studio Lite, or in Copilot Studio, because it'll adjust the format and the text for you. So you don't have to worry about stepping and staging and all that other stuff. If you want to build an advanced agent, you can just say, hey, here's what I want to do. Give me the proper instructions. So here I'm going to say, provide information only. Sources provided. And you're able to give more instructions. This is just really brief for here. And importantly, while you're in this interface, you can test it. So here, if I click on, which company has the highest AUM, you'll see here, since I told it to provide a table when I think it's accurate, it should give me a table. So back to kind of, again, how you want things formatted, specific tones. While this is generating, an important thing to note, when you build agents, you do want to think about what it shouldn't be responding to, what you don't want it to do. You don't want to focus on what it should do. You want to focus on what it shouldn't be doing, so that you're not having someone get answers for something that's not relevant or do something that you're not expecting it to do. So if you are asking these questions about, hey, how do I enroll my phone in Intune? You don't want it to just go out and answer a question with random information. You wanted to respond back with, hey, I can't help you with that. I can only help with this. Go contact helpdesk at ECI.com, right? You want to steer users, think about utterances and stuff of that nature. So here we go. It picked up AUM, assets under management. So we can see here the top one that was there is a Crestview at 2.2 billion. Shout out to anybody who thought that they were the ones with the highest AUM. And then it gives us a kind of an expansion there. So I can save, I can close this, and now this agent's ready to go. Importantly, with agents in SharePoint, anybody who is a member or an owner has access to the agents when you save them or create them. So visitors by default do not get access to them. So that's great. So you don't have to worry about if someone just has read access that they're going to hit an agent and start slamming it with questions. But with that, if you want to publish an agent, make it more broadly available, you can do that. And what happens is it moves the agent, when you go to publish it, over to the out of the document library, puts it into the site contents section. So you can mark agents as approved. You only can do that as an owner of a SharePoint site. So it does give you the flexibility there where you can look at an agent and then you want to mark it as approved. When you mark it as approved, that's when it performs the move. And then you can also then set a specific agent to be the default agent. So you can change this default. Instead of it being that DDQ one you would have saw in the beginning, you can have it always be this APAC DDQ agent. Lastly, there is a web part for agents, which you probably saw in the beginning, this DDQ agent summarizer here. You can add them. There's additional web parts that'll be coming next month. So you do have a lot of flexibility in how you can present your agents to users. So if it's an agent you want to offer on your intranet site, again, to answer marketing questions, human resources questions, again, think about those quick wins that you can get in your business. It's a great way to achieve that. So importantly with agents in SharePoint, to wrap this part of it up, is those agents do live in the Microsoft 365 extensibility layer now. So you can see I do have that DDQ agent summarizer that I highlighted there before. I can ask it questions just like all the other agent experiences. They're portable now, which is fantastic because you don't have to force people to use SharePoint to go there. So you can actually see there's the APAC one, there's the old name, so it'll update in a few moments. But you can quickly offer that to people as well. So if someone builds something, it'll move to them there as well. Importantly, with all these agents that you build, whether you do it with the agents in SharePoint or agents inside of the extensibility layer, you can add those agents to Teams chats. So as an example here, just to show one that I did a little while ago, is you can add an agent to a chat just like you would a normal user, and you can ask questions in chat to it to get answers. So here I asked DDQ agent summarizer, which fund has the highest AUM, and it gave me the answer. Importantly with this, since this agent lives in the Teams chat or in the Teams channel, it prompts the user to say, hey, here's the answer to your instruction, answer to your question, and it gives the person who, the requester, the ability to actually put it in the channel. So you do have that human review on what the agent's generating. You can dismiss it for 24 hours, but there is that always, hey, this is what I found. Here's the answer to the question. Here's what I did for you. Are you sure you want this to go into the chat? So you do have that human kind of verification there. But again, it's a great way to get agents into your weekly sales call meeting, into your monthly powwows, right? Think about how you can bring those agents in there and carry them across. Whew. Now let's look at the Copilot agent building experience. So very similar to what I showed before, it's just a bit more expansive. I'm not going to spend too much time on here because that's pretty self-explanatory as I did before. You can use the describe function to describe what you want the agent to do. That'll automatically generate you instruction, create starter prompts, etc. So if you're new to building agents, you can do this here, or again, hint, hint, wink, wink, use Copilot to give you all those information as well in the main chat. But here, if I wanted to do a DDQ agent, I would do the same thing. So I'm just going to pick an old agent just in the interest of doing that. I think this is a SharePoint agent. Yes, we don't want that one. We want this one. So if you build an agent in Copilot Studio Lite, same thing applies. You have your description, you have your instructions, you have more expansive knowledge. So if you wanted to be able to have access to the internet, if you wanted to search specific data sources, use certain connectors, you have the capability of that as well. Importantly, if you wanted to generate graphs, generate charts, you want to turn on code interpreter and you want to turn on image generator because that's how it will generate all of that. And one thing that always happens with people that I talk to that are building agents is they always forget that you need suggested prompts. You need a minimum of 3. Otherwise, you will find that sometimes your agent won't respond. I cannot tell you why. I did not say why you had to have 3. Someone on the Microsoft side, when they coded all this, said 3 is the magic number. I don't know. But if you're having your agents act funky and you don't have any starter prompts, go and add them, even if it's an agent that is being declarative. So it's something to do there as well. But in the interface, you're able to do everything that you saw before, right? So I can get summaries on those. I can do these starter prompts here. And importantly, when I build agents here, they're for me natively. They're for you by default. But if I want to share it with colleagues, because I think this agent is really great, this will help the team, this will help other people, you can share those. So you can click share, add specific people. If you want to enable it to be published to the entire organization, you have that flexibility as well. So you can build agents, no code, just instruction, and get real business impact without having to drill into that. So something to keep in mind. And again, back to what I say about doing stuff specifically is, I said in here, don't repeat information, never answer questions that are unrelated to the DDQs or any of the funds, always maintain professional and collaborative tone, do not provide creative content or discuss, related offensive or harmful topics. So again, make sure you're enforcing what the agent should not do in your prompting. And then lastly, to show Copilot Studio, sorry, I clicked on my edge and not the edge in the edge. To get to Copilot Studio, everybody can get there. If you're licensed for Microsoft 365 Copilot, you have access to Copilot Studio. It's included with your license. You just don't get all of the preview features. Actually, you get none of the preview features. So if you want to use different models, you want to use advanced connectors, that requires either pay-as-you-go servicing or the Copilot credits that I talked about before as a message pack. So you need either one of those to use preview features and or be able to publish agents to channels other than your Microsoft 365 or Teams. So if you want to publish it to a website, embed it into a web part, use unauthenticated agents, things of that nature, that requires you to have that additional licensing because that's where it uses for metering. Or again, you can use pay-as-you-go. I'm going to pick on an agent that I've built before, so this email portfolio summarizer. And you'll see here in the interface, it's a very similar experience, right? Everything I've showed before is also here. So you can really take yourself from I'm building really simple agents in SharePoint to I'm using Copilot Studio Lite to do some stuff to I want to go further and do more as I've learned and developed my skill sets. So in here, you can use orchestration if you want to. You can use generative answers. It's all part of the core experience. You can specify which model you want to use. My tenant is enabled for Anthropic models, so I'm able to do those. A couple things to note about any of these models. If you use the default model, you do not have to worry about credits. If you use the chat model, you don't have to worry about credits. If you use anything that is experimental or uses reasoning, there is a tenant level monthly cap that you can hit. So you want to make sure that if you're building agents in Copilot Studio, that you're not always forcing reasoning because you'll hit a wall and you have this great agent that is doing all of your help desk work and all of a sudden it will stop working. I have had clients that has had that happen and it brings the entire business to a halt. So again, there are hard caps on these things that Microsoft doesn't fully disclose. So you want to start with basic models and then layer in reasoning later, or build an agent that is only doing reasoning and call it from your other agents. And I'll show you how you can do that here in the main interface. Microsoft also importantly rotates the model. So you'll see here it's 4.1. Funnily enough, it was 4.0 last week, but 4.0 is now retired. So 4.1 has become the default and soon it'll be 5 chat. But if you want to use retired models, you can. You have 30 additional days to do that. Here's your option to let other agents connect and use this one. It is currently in preview, but it actually works pretty great. And then if you don't want generative orchestration, here's where you can turn it off. That's where you're using topics. If you're interested in doing a full tilt Copilot Studio workshop, happy to send you a scope of work for that. I've done a number of them for clients where we do a real in-depth look at Copilot Studio, topic generation, how to build agents in depth. I know we're hitting the time limit here, but something that we can do there. But importantly, when you build here in this Copilot Studio, you have the ability to use tools, triggers. So here I can have I have an agent that posts a message into a chat or channel. So this agent is taking an email and summarizing it for me and putting it into this investment team portfolio email channel. So here's the example there. So there's a summary of it. It looks a little funky because of how it had to be formatted at the time. But you're able to make agents be declarative with actions and triggers. So the trigger here is when email arrives. This is just looking at when an email goes into a specific folder, do this action. So you can build your agents to do that. You can also use orchestration there. You see here, I don't actually have the tenant. I don't have the team or the channel called out in those actions. I'm using dynamic actions to do so. So you put that in your instruction and the agent will follow it. That being said, I know we're over time. I'll give it back to Jen to close us up here. If anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out.
Julius, thanks so much. I appreciate it. I will direct folks to ECI.com. We have a resources tab that has so much information. We have been discussing and enabling AI and Copilot with our clients for well over 18 months now. Well, probably Julius just hinted at 3 years. I don't horrifying to me that it's been that quick. But that said, we have white papers, we have webinars, we have podcasts and recordings there where you can find more information. Julius is always available, kind enough to throw up the QR code. Two things that we mentioned as we went through this. First was prompt engineering. There is a cheat sheet also in that area that I just mentioned. Just gives you a good perspective on, sometimes when you go through it, it's good to describe your role, describe what you're looking for, and it kind of gives you the cues as to how to build a prompt. I am a novice. Julius has trained me well, so that has helped me along the way to figure out what are the points that I need to make as before I hit send on that prompt. Also in there, we had a conversation about ChatGPT. Awesome tool. Sure, all of you are using it, whether personally or professionally. We did a white paper on what some of the risks are and how to secure those risks and things to look out for, even in an enterprise version. So I would recommend anybody interested in doing that. It's a good peruse to go over there and take that read. Lastly, the recording from this event, as well as the deck, Julius has graciously offered to share. We'll email that out to you over the next day or so, along with a copy of our Microsoft playbook that will give you a whole bunch of guides and how-tos to get you started. So we're here to support. Please feel free to reach out. And with that, thank you for joining us. Thanks, Julius.
Thank you.